As we reported last night with the fearless Janice Dean, New York Governor Cuomo is facing calls for a criminal investigation after a top aide admitted that his administration covered up the true number of COVID deaths in nursing homes. Cuomo's reporting the numbers amid fears that they would be used in an investigation against them. She tried to walk those comments back today, but a growing chorus is now calling for the governor to resign, or at least give back that Emmy.
I've called for Governor Cuomo's resignation. I think this is probably going to look like criminal behavior. This is now the cover-up. This has to be investigated. I think actually the governor, just to do a service to New York State, should resign.
We'll see about that. The wonderful Tammy Bruce is here. Tammy, do you actually think they're going to... This is basically a story where the Democrats themselves are turning on Cuomo. No Republicans need be involved on this. Do you think his fellow Democrats can actually take this guy out over what he did?
Well, clearly they think that this is getting close to the edge of the water here. But I would say that if this is a man, and it appears as though it is, that is willing to send 9,000 COVID-infected people into nursing homes and assisted living facilities, which he himself said was like lighting a match onto, dry grass. If he's that kind of person, he's not going to care about what anyone else thinks. That's the problem here for New York. Janice Dean, of course, has been a hero in this regard. But the fact is that if he doesn't resign, there is going to be an investigation. And even now, apparently, the Biden administration has refused to say that, and this usually is a problem, has refused to say that they have confidence in Mr. Cuomo at this point.
But you nevertheless think he can tough it out on this, Tammy. I find interesting...
I think he thinks he can.
Yeah. So he's going to try and do it because that's his style, the who cares style. What's interesting to me, if I was like a junior in the old days, whatever it was, 30, 50, 70 years ago, if you were a junior reporter on a New York, a Manhattan newspaper, or even an Albany newspaper, you would think this is a great opportunity for me. There's a terrific story here. Instead, these utterly pathetic mainstream news organizations, all based in New York, are basically ignoring this story.
Yeah, there's been one or two local reporters up in Albany who've been working hard trying to get information, but then it just is not forthcoming. You get shunned away, right? You get shushed, you get mocked. You saw how Cuomo mocked even our own Janice Dean. The guy's a jerk, all right? You can be a jerk and actually do a good job at your job. But in this case, the media is complicit. Right? There is no sense of curiosity at all when it seemed to be obvious the nature of what happened. And by the way, if you really feel you need to hide the numbers of deaths to forestall a federal investigation, it tells you that they knew that what had happened was wrong. Look, this is a pandemic. Many people are dying around the world, and yet they felt compelled, according to this aide, to hide that, which means they understand the complicity. And the cover-up began, I would argue, Mark, when they removed his original order from the interweb tubes, from the website for his office. They knew, and he continued to try to blame others.
Yeah, and then he basically issued everybody a liability waiver. We've just had breaking news, Tammy, that Steve Schmidt has resigned from the Lincoln Project. As you know, these Never Trump guys. He's resigned because the place, they were all buddies with this sex predator whose track record goes back decades and now has dozens of young men speaking out against him. And Steve Schmidt says he was molested when he was a Boy Scout, so he has to take this thing seriously. That's another story that, amazingly, all the people who gave airtime to George Clooney and Steve Schmidt and these other Lincoln Project guys, again, have steered clear of.
Yeah, I think you're going to be watching. This is like rats jumping off of the ship. But really, there's a big question about who knew what when, the nature of what was happening in that entity. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, that's we'll see about that. Thank you for that, Tammy. It's always good to see you, especially on a Friday. The great Tammy Bruce. You can see her on Fox Nation.
Thank you, Mark.
With the show Get Tammy Bruce. Thank you, Tammy.